Arielle Friedman, and I'm the host of a podcast called My Motivation. And it's basically like the title, it's a motivational and inspirational podcast where I, along with guests, share inspirational stories, tips, and advice for living your best life and reaching your full potential. And all the episodes really go back to this importance of having a positive mindset. And some past episodes I've done, just examples of some topics have included, why positive thinking is important and how to implement this type of thinking in your everyday life, how not to walk away from dreams when they're not happening as quickly as you'd like them to, and, how to step out of your comfort zone and why it's important. So those are just a few example topics of some past episodes.
Wow, well, that sounds great and applicable to anyone who could listen to them. I hope all the girls watching this go and listen to all of those. And I mean, clearly those are very inspiring. Did you have any inspiration or role models for them or for starting the podcast?
Yeah, so I think my biggest inspiration is definitely my mom. She's an entrepreneur herself, and she's just really the perfect example of what you can accomplish with drive and persistence and determination and hard work. And she's also taught me a lot about how to stay positive in difficult situations as well, and how to find the humor in any situation. And she really has also taught me how to look for opportunities and obstacles, which I think is a really important skill to have when you're starting a business, as it's no easy task.
Definitely.
And apart from my mom too, I just think I listen to a lot of motivational podcasts myself, and just kind of the big names that I've always listened to have inspired me to come up with this podcast, just because they've impacted my life in so many ways and have taught me, how to change your perspective on life and how to think positive. And so I wanted to kind of pay forward what I learned from listening to all of them as well.
Wow, that is inspiring in itself. That's so great you're giving back like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And going off of the advice, what would you tell a girl who wants to start a business or company, but she feels like she's too young or too inexperienced?
Yeah, so I would say definitely, don't ever put an age limit on your dreams. I think it's important to think that, to remember that every successful entrepreneur started out in similar shoes, and no one is born an expert in something. And just the best way to learn, I feel like, is to throw yourself into it. And if you're truly passionate about it and decide that there's no other option but to be successful, I really believe that you will be. And I feel like when you make the decision that this is something you really want to pursue, I feel like just the right people will come into your life and they'll guide you, and you'll get the information that you need. And if you feel like you don't know enough, definitely take advantage of the internet. I feel like there's so much valuable information out there right at your fingertips. And, feeling like I didn't know enough was how I first felt when I was starting the podcast, because I literally knew nothing about podcasting or anything like that. But I just took advantage of the internet, and I did a lot of Googling and research on it. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and, YouTube is great because you can really learn anything on it. And so I learned just so much valuable information on everything from what equipment to use, to publishing sites, to how many episodes to launch with, to how to market it. So the information is really out there and at your fingertips to take advantage of. And I feel like also too, it's important to be willing to do trial and error as well, because sometimes, you'll read advice online and, maybe it's worked for someone else, but then when you try to apply it to you, it may not be as successful. So I just think you have to be willing to try out a bunch of different things and trial and error with it.
Those are all such great points. It sounds like you are going to have a lot of good advice to share based on your podcast topics.
Thank you. I hope so.
So what would you tell a girl, or what would you say is the most important first step in starting a company?
So I'd say definitely an important first step is just having a really good sense of what your business is and picking something that you're truly passionate about, because you're going to be putting a lot of hours, a lot of time into it. And I also say having a good sense of what your business is, just outlining that mission statement, coming up with your values, what your long-term vision is, what it stands for. Because if you don't have a good sense of what your business is, other people will have a hard time seeing that vision as well. So just be really clear on that. And then also, I feel like if you're able to, just finding a mentor as well to be able to guide you along the way, because they've already been successful in what you're trying to do, so they'll have great advice to really guide you through everything.
Those are all some of the best starting points. And your answer might bleed into this question a little, but what do you think are the top 3 skills a girl needs to be a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I definitely think there is some overlap in that. And one of them I would say is definitely being passionate. Because you're spending so much time on your business and putting so many hours into it, it's got to be something that you love and you're really passionate about. I think it's also really important to have a positive mindset and be resilient, because you're going to face so many obstacles. There's going to be so many hurdles that pop up. And so you've got to have a good mindset to keep pushing through those and bounce back really quickly. And then I think it's also really important to have really good problem solving abilities, because obstacles are going to come up, but you've got to be able to find those creative solutions to problems and look for growth opportunities.
I cannot agree more with all of those. And as an entrepreneur, you know that there are ups and downs. So, what is the most disappointing or difficult part of entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah, so I'd say the most disappointing part is like when I put an episode out there that I've worked really hard on and that I'm really excited about and that I think a lot of people will benefit from. And then I don't see like the reach that I'm hoping to get is definitely a disappointing part about it. But I just try to remind myself to be patient and to know that, you know, getting a reach, a following doesn't happen overnight, but you just got to keep staying with it and just keep doing my best and being consistent with publishing, and that it'll get there eventually. So just being patient has tried to help me through those disappointing times when I'm not seeing the result that I was hoping for initially right away.
It's a tough but good strategy. And on
Thank
the
you.
flip side of that, what are the easiest or most rewarding parts of entrepreneurship?
So I'd say the most rewarding parts are definitely hearing positive feedback from listeners that they've benefited in a certain way from hearing an episode, and also doing interviews with so many amazing people like yourself, Isabel, and hearing everyone's stories and inspiring journeys and all the incredible things that they're doing. Because even though I made the podcast to inspire others, I feel like just hearing everyone's stories is inspiring me as a result. And we just did an interview the other week, and it was so inspiring to hear about your journey and all the amazing things that you're doing with Sweet, and you provided so much great advice. So it's really rewarding for me to hear all these amazing stories, because it's really inspiring me as a result.
I can imagine everything you must have heard, and thank you so much again for having me. I had so much fun sharing.
I loved having you on, and you shared so much great advice, and your journey is so inspiring, and everything that you're doing is so great.
Thank you so much. So, for the girls who may want to try a podcast or go into the media space, could you share a little bit behind the scenes? What are the most useful tools or platforms that you found helpful?
Yeah, so I did a lot of research when I was first starting out, because I literally didn't know where to start. So I think definitely going to YouTube is definitely a very valuable tool, and just searching, how to launch a podcast, what are the best publishing tools to use, just the basics, so you can hear from a bunch of different people and get a bunch of different perspectives. But for me, when I was just starting out, I have been using a site called Anchor to launch the podcast. It's really easy to use, and you get some really basic analytics with it as well, so you can get a basic idea of who the listeners are. And I really recommend going through a publishing site, because this one platform will send out the podcast to a bunch of different media sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast. Just really, there's a long list of them, so you don't have to individually go to each platform and submit your RSS feed, and it's a very manual process. So it definitely streamlines everything and does a lot of the hard work for you. So I definitely recommend that. And yeah, there's so many different podcasts, or publishing sites, but it really depends on your unique needs and and what you're trying to do with the individual show that you're trying to launch. But I've definitely found a lot of success with Anchor. And then for recording, I have a Mac computer, so I just use GarageBand to edit the different shows, and just watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to work it. And then for interviewing people, I found a lot of success with a site called Zencaster, and it just is a really simple tool to use. And so that's made recording very easy for me as well.
Wow, it sounds like you have it down for all the best platforms. Those are great places to start.
Still learning, but there's definitely, so much to keep learning and a lot of helpful information out there.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur and in the media space in particular, how do you handle the gender gap?
Yeah, so it's tough because, as we all know, the business world is so male dominated. And when I think of the podcasting space and the motivational podcasting space in general, it's also very male dominated. All of the big names that I listen to happen to all be males. And so, I even have a hard time of thinking of a strong female presence in the space because it is so male dominated. But considering this, I think you just have to think of, being a woman and as a unique strength, because I just try to realize that no one can be exactly like me, and that there are certain qualities that are unique to myself that set me apart from others. And I think this really allows me to bring something different to the table. And my goal is to really be that strong female presence in the space, to give women more representation in that area. So I think even though it is so male dominated, you just have to look at what you bring to the table as a unique strength of yours.
Definitely. That's wonderful. You're so focused on bringing in females to the space, especially.
Yeah, I feel like we definitely need more representation out there for sure.
And how do you address diversity through your podcasts and in your workplace?
So I try to address diversity just by bringing on a wide range of guests with varying backgrounds and experiences, and I try to cover a wide range of topics. And so I just try to, to talk to and bring on as many people as I can with very broad different experiences. And I feel like everyone can really value it and learn a lot from them, and everything that they have to offer and share with everyone.
That's great. And switching gears a little back to the founding of your podcast, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice when you first started it, what would you say?
I would definitely say to be patient, just because, things don't happen overnight. And I have various goals for myself in terms of the reach I want to achieve, but I think it's also really important when I, try to take a step back and set really good realistic expectations in the short term, and constantly have my definition of success change over time. Because I feel like when you have a really big goal, if you don't break it down into smaller, more attainable ones in the short term, you'll get really discouraged when things don't start happening for you in the timetable that you want for yourself. So when you really take a big goal down and break it into smaller ones, you really get that motivation to keep going, because you get those small wins, and then you can celebrate those small wins and keep pushing forward. And I also think, going off of that, it's also really important to change the way we look at failure too, because I feel like a lot of people just don't try anything because they're scared to fail. And I feel like if we look at failure as not a permanent destination, but as a way to learn and develop, it's a learning experience, and it allows us to grow and develop our skills, then we'll be more open to trying certain things and looking at those as a learning opportunity, and that'll help us keep going forward also.
That is some great advice. I hope all the girls listening take that to heart and remember it when they're starting their companies, because patience is definitely key.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So I have a few more questions, and they're more on the fun side. So the first one is, what has been your most rewarding moment being your own leader with a podcast?
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick one. I think there's definitely a few that stand out. The first one is definitely just seeing it all come together, because it was an idea that I had for so long and had been working so hard on it for so many months, and didn't even know if I was ever going to actually follow through with it. I had a hard time, believing it was ever going to come to fruition. But once it did, just seeing it all come together was definitely just rewarding, in the sense of knowing that I was able to follow through with something, and, that I had put so much work into. And also just hearing the positive feedback from listeners, and also getting to talk to so many inspirational people and hearing their stories. It's definitely inspiring me, as I hope it's I hope it's as inspiring for everyone else listening. But just meeting all these wonderful people that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet if it wasn't for the podcast.
I can only imagine all the great stories you've heard. I'm jealous.
Definitely a lot of great advice, and it's definitely very, very inspiring, and I'm definitely learning a lot.
That's great. And when you did first see it all come together, or you have those inspirational moments, how do you celebrate your wins?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely really important to celebrate, because I feel like we get so caught up in our to-do list, and it's important to
Mhm.
take a second to stop. And I try to just treat myself to something that I enjoy. So whether that be going for ice cream, or watching a favorite show of mine, or getting a meal from one of my favorite restaurants, or going kayaking, which is something I love to do over the summer. I just try to take time for myself, and do something for me, and try to disconnect for a little bit when I get those wins.
Those all sound fun. I want to do them right now. I have a bonus question. What is your favorite word?
Ooh, my favorite word. It's a hard question. There's so many.
I know.
Um, hmm. I would have to say probably I would have to say, positivity, because I feel like positivity really um, transcends into every aspect of life. And if you can really have a positive mindset, I feel like that transcends into success in so many different aspects of life. And I truly feel like our thoughts and what we say and what we put out into the universe is what we get back, and is what we focus on is what we attract more of into our lives. So I feel like, it's so, so important to just have a positive mindset always, and look at opportunities rather than obstacles. And so definitely I would say positivity, because I'm all about the power of positive thinking, for sure.
100%. Everything you just said is so, so true. And lastly, can you share a funny story?
Yeah. So actually, the story I want to share is from our interview that took place about a week ago. I was using a program called Zencaster to record the interview, and I hadn't used it before, but I had tried it out on myself just to make sure it was working properly. So I tested the audio, and it sounded fine. And this platform is known as being something that's really easy to use. So we did our interview on it, and we could hear each other just fine. And so I thought everything went really well. But then when I clicked stop recording and I saw the track pop up and I had played it, I noticed that, nothing that I said was coming through at all. I couldn't hear my voice at all. And I didn't know what happened. I thought I had lost the whole thing. And I was reaching out to you saying, I thought we were going to have to redo everything, which I felt horrible about. And I even had my friend try it out with me after our call to see if the same thing was happening, and it was, and I just didn't understand what was going on. And so I went on the Zencaster support page, but they're not online until Monday, and we did the interview over the weekend, and I was just reading tons of articles to try to figure this out. And then eventually I came across an article that said that it uploads the tracks into the audio into two separate tracks, one for each person. So that explains why I couldn't hear myself talk, because we each had our own track. And I guess when I was looking at the site, my eyes were only going to the right side of the page, so I didn't even see that there was an audio track for myself. But I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes the answer is right in front of you when you don't realize it. So.
Well, I would have been more than happy to do the interview again. It was so much fun, but I'm glad you figured it out.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else you want to add, or any last piece of advice for the girls?
Yeah, I just want to say that to all the girls listening, that you can really do anything that you set your mind to. And I feel like you have all the skills that you need to really be successful already within you. And as long as you believe in yourself and you work hard and be compassionate and kind, the sky is really the limit.
Thank you for ending on such a positive note, as the rest of the interview's been. And thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to share this interview on Sweet.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.